You don't want to plunge yourself into 1,000 years of darkness. Good morning, folks. Good morning, Americans. Good morning, fellow Christian brothers and sisters. It is good to see you today. We are looking at a Wednesday here in Prescott, Arizona. This is Chappy, and this is Walk Like Lions. Good to see you today. Patriotic theme today because it is Wednesday, and we have some good stuff here. We've been talking several episodes here about the Battle of the Bulge because technically back in 1944 into 1945 the battle was being fought during this time frame, and we need to look back at it, folks. It was an incredible event and an incredible stand, an incredible victory for the American forces, or the Allied forces. Sorry, Britain. So it's really neat to learn some lessons from it, to touch on some of the things, and to learn a little bit more. It wasn't just about Bastogne and Patton coming up. There was so much that was going on in the Battle of the Bulge, and so many stories that stand out. It fills volumes. It literally does. Some of the books are seriously thick, folks, and it's good reading too. It's not just boring history stuff. It's actually some seriously good reading. I want to focus today on the northern ridge, the northern shoulder of the Battle of the Bulge, where the 2nd Infantry and 99th Infantry were initially engaged. And oh boy, this is some pretty cool stuff. In particular, the area we're looking at is the Elsenridge Ridge, and right below it are the twin villages of, all right, I'm going to pronounce, let's see how we can do this, Rosherith and Krinkelt. Just the twin villages, okay, folks? Folks, now, the key part about what happens here on the northern shoulder is it was the only sector on the American front line during the battle where the Germans failed to advance because of the efforts of these two infantry divisions and then the subsequent, the reinforcements that were brought in. So this was a good area, a good fight. It was a big fight, a serious fight, and we're going to find out as we go. Now, I've been on the ground there several times. We did battlefield tours, and not like, hey, touristy stuff. This is where we took soldiers from the unit in Germany and took them to the battlefront and to the actual area there. And we walked around and we showed them what happened. They jumped into foxholes. They saw the different crossroads and the different defensive positions that were held. And we basically showed them what happened during that first 3 days of the Battle of the Bulge. And then we applied some lessons to them. We basically taught them the values that were held as they were up there on the line. And you could summarize those kind of like how MacArthur had summarized in his famous speech, duty, honor, country. And hopefully those values, those American values, those soldier values, sunk into their hearts and their souls, and they still hold on to those values to this day, because that's what we're talking about. All right, so in this particular sector, this northern sector here, the 99th Infantry's on the line there. The 16th of December rolls and the Battle of the Bulge begins, and I'll be straight up, the 99th, as every division on that line initially, was not prepared. And the forward elements were simply, for the most part, overrun, and every element just began to displace back from there. The little sector we had visited right outside of about 2 kilometers from the twin villages was, we stood in the foxholes, and just looking through the woods, you could imagine on a snowy morning with the fog rolling in, just the utter horror as white figures start appear and the battle begins. These guys took a hard hit. Now when they displaced, they just didn't run like crazy, like, oh my God, it's the Germans, run. No. They were American infantry, and they dug in, they fought as hard as they could, and they understood, hey, we need to displace, we need to get back to other positions where we could defend and continue the fight. So that's what they did, is they displaced back, folks. Now it did shatter the different elements. Like the units were basically became ad hoc hodgepodge units as they displaced. You just displaced, found a bunch of guys, holding down a crossroad or a small hill, and you joined them, and you fought until you could, and then you displaced if you were outnumbered. Now, there are a 2nd Infantry Division, Captain MacDonald, Captain MacDonald. He's got a book out that he wrote called Company Commander. Phenomenal book. He fought in this fight too, and in the book he records being called up to because the attack had started. They got brought in to set up a defensive line right outside of the twin villages, and we've actually, following his book and the description given in his book, we actually found his foxholes all along this, it wasn't a ridge, but all along the side of this hill. And it was he was that detailed, and it was amazing. But he put up a serious hold there, allowed a lot of the units to get back into the twin villages. And then the Elsenridge Ridge is going to come in key here, because they were trying to protect and slow the advance so that everything could be set up, a defense could be set up on the Elsenridge Ridge. So MacDonald was instrumental in that happening. And then just the battle that happened in the twin villages, because everything kind of went back to that. As units were displacing, it was a major crossroad. They all started ending up back at the twin villages here. And this fight lasted for, we're talking a good 48 hours of just fighting, not just using the houses there, but in all the little agricultural terrain and the forested area around it. These little ad hoc units would just throw everything they had against the basically a panzer division coming at them. The stories that start to come out are, you got like 2 guys just putting a machine gun down, a 50 cal down at an intersection, and just holding off wave after wave of Germans. You got stories of individual guys picking up a bazooka and one-on-one stalking German panzers to take out the tanks and destroy them. Amazing, folks. You got to get these books out. You got to read them. You got to get down. Here's why. In the Battle of the Twin Villages alone, there were 6 Medal of Honor recipients. All right. 6 Medal of Honor in that battle alone. This battle for the twin villages. That is the intensity that was going on there. That was the valor and the honor that was shown. The duty, honor, country values that was shown on that battlefield that day. These guys were displacing, but they knew they still had to fight. They still had to hold off best they could, all they could. And they did it. It basically just stopped the German advance. Then they all displaced back up to the Elsenridge Ridge, and they held for the rest of the time. The Germans made no ground in that sector, and they had one of the top German generals, SS generals, trying to punch through there. It was amazing, folks. Yes, American soldiers, American infantry on the ground. It's what we do, folks. It's what we do. So I just want you to understand that. And to be able to bring soldiers there and say, hey, this is what happened. At first they were like, oh, we're going to go learn history. Oh, come on. No, they went for more than history. They learned what really happened and what was done by soldiers that were the same age as they were. You're looking at soldiers anywhere from 19 to 25 years old that held the ground there. It wasn't about some general and his masterful plan to hold. It was about these individual soldiers, individual soldiers that were out there making the difference on the battlefield for their country, folks. And that's what comes down hard here. And you got to understand, and it's awesome. All right. Now, you know how we always like to pull some spiritual realities from our stories here, because this is kind of critical. Folks, it is imperative in today's day and age that as Christians, we pass on to those coming behind us, the younger Christians, the younger people, our children, for that matter, our Christian values, how they stand before, how they stand today. The Word says that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So it's not going to change. There's not going to be some new concept that comes into play here. Well, this is how Christianity... No, it's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So you got to understand that these principles have to be brought forward and given to the kids. They have to see the heroes of faith. They have to see how these values apply to life directly. And this is very important because we've seen this fail in just regular values in this country anyway. Okay? I mean, there's a certain percentage of this country that has no honor left, that has no morals left. They will do anything to get their way or their... Yeah, let's just leave it at that because we're getting spiritual here, folks. You got to understand that it's our responsibility as the older Christians, the more experienced Christians, to let them know and ensure that they can see how our values and morals really affect life around us, and we pass that on to them, pass our legacy. So these are the few scripture passages that I picked today. Check this out, Deuteronomy. That's in the Old Testament. I got two from the Old Testament here. That old school stuff. This is kind of some of the pages that stick together, folks. Deuteronomy 4:9. Only take care and keep your souls diligently, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. If we don't teach them, it's never going to get in here. And if we don't remember them, folks, it's going to leave your heart. You won't even embrace those values anymore. Make them known to your children and to your children's children. Coming straight from the Bible, folks. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Folks, and these verses focus a lot on children and the teaching of children. But you got to understand, you got to keep this, you got to remind people daily. You got to remind people and just always focus on it. Because even as adults, well, older adults especially, we forget things. But if we go back, we look at these things, if we do the history, if we talk about it, we put forward these values and we hopefully cement them for life in our hearts. Now here's the cool thing. Here's the final verse that a lot of people apply still. It's getting less and less, but this comes from our communion service. And it really happened. It was in Luke. It was the Last Supper. And he took the bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." The cool thing about having communion is it's a tangible, like, okay, yes, we're here, we're receiving something. Do this in remembrance. Our church does it every week. Every week we look back on what Christ did for us. And a lot of churches have forgotten to do communion, or, it's not important. Folks, it's critical. Again, it's one of those values. It's one of those things we do to remember what Christ did for us, to remember our Christian legacy, to remember the values that establish our faith. So you got to understand that this is important stuff here, folks. Pass these lessons on. For the soldiers out there, for the people who have built this country, just teach the younger people what you have seen, tell them what you have done, and take those values and instill them in them, folks, because we are on a precipice of possibly losing these values. And that would be a sad day, folks. You don't want to plunge yourself into 1,000 years of darkness just because you didn't want to give a witness to your story, or you were too afraid to pass on a value that's kind of become maybe unpopular. No, that's the wrong answer. The Lord, the ways of the Lord, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that's what we stand on, folks. We stand on the Word. We stand on what Christ has done for us, folks. All right. I think we had a good time here, folks. I had a good time. This is good stuff. Hello to everybody out there watching. I see you waving. I appreciate that. We got some thumbs coming up. Thank you. If this touched you, or if you know someone who could use this little lesson today, pass it on to them. Hit the share button. Get it out there, folks, so that we can get some people focused on things of God. And it's a joy to be here today. And as usual, we shall always end this with walk like lions.